Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm 46 years old, a mother of 2 girls, and up until last year, I thought I understood what family meant. What I'm about to tell you is the story of how my in-laws tried to destroy my daughter's reputation to protect their own image, and the day I walked into their church and made sure everyone there knew exactly who they really were. They cornered my 15-year-old at a farmer's market. 6 grown women surrounded a crying teenager, calling her unchristian for refusing to love the grandparents who, 2 days after her father's funeral, had called her a bastard in writing. When I found out who was really behind it, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I got quiet. And 3 weeks later, I walked into that woman's church with a stack of handmade booklets that looked exactly like their hymn books. By the time I left, her son's affair was the least of her problems. Let me back up. For 18 years, I was married to a man named Mark. We had 2 daughters, Emma, who's 17 now, and Lily, who just turned 15. I was the one who kept our household running financially. My income was the one that paid the mortgage, kept the lights on, and put both girls in the schools we wanted for them. Mark worked too, but I was the backbone of that house. Keep that detail in the back of your mind, because it matters later. Mark's parents are Diane and Robert, 78 and 80 years old, devout members of a conservative church on the other side of town. The kind of church where the women dress like they're going into battle every Sunday, and gossip moves faster than the offering plate gets passed around. For most of our marriage, I'll be fair, Diane and Robert were mostly background noise. Judgmental about my job, my clothes, my opinions, the way I raised the girls. Nothing I couldn't handle. I genuinely thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. So very wrong. A year ago, Mark died in a car accident. No warning. No goodbye. One Tuesday, we were arguing about grocery money, and the next Tuesday, I was standing in a funeral home picking out a casket while my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Grief on its own is disorienting enough. But within weeks, everything got so much worse. It turned out Mark had been having an affair for years with a woman I'll call Vanessa. Vanessa had 2 little boys, Mark's sons. My own daughters were the ones who discovered it. The messages, the photos, all of it. It was Emma and Lily who came to me, shaking, and told me the truth about their father. That's what started the divorce. I had already filed the paperwork before Mark died. We were mid-divorce, still fighting over the details, when the accident happened. And here's the part that still makes my stomach drop. Vanessa had died too, separately, just months before Mark. Which meant there were now 2 little boys orphaned, with a dead father and a dead mother, and suddenly very engaged grandparents circling around the word family. I want to be completely honest with you. I felt for those boys. None of what happened afterward was ever their fault. They were innocent children caught in wreckage they had no part in creating. But my daughters were never obligated to raise their father's secret sons. And they were absolutely not obligated to pretend that years of betrayal, secrecy, and heartbreak had simply never happened, just so 2 elderly grandparents could feel like a whole family again. Diane and Robert did not see it that way. Not even a little. First came the custody attempts. Diane and Robert tried to gain legal custody of Emma and Lily. That case is still working its way through the courts as I'm telling you this. Then came the request to move in with us permanently. I shut that down immediately. That was never, ever happening. Then it got personal in a way I never saw coming. There's a farmer's market near where we live. A good one. Fresh produce, local honey, a bakery that makes cinnamon bread good enough to bring you to your knees. It was Lily's birthday week. Her real party wasn't for a few more weeks, so I gave her some spending money and let her wander the market on her own to buy whatever made her happy. Mostly chocolate. She's 15. That tracks. About an hour later, my phone rang. It was Lily, crying, barely able to form full sentences. Mom, some people, they won't stop. I didn't wait to hear the rest of that sentence. Emma and I were already moving. We found her surrounded, 6 older women, forming a loose, tightening circle around my 15-year-old daughter, voices raised, faces hard as stone. They were telling her she was unchristian, that she was cruel for refusing to spend time with her grandparents, that she should be a good big sister to her poor orphaned baby brothers, standing right there in the middle of a public market over chocolate she'd picked out for her own birthday. Let that sink in for a second. My daughters are the ones who uncovered their father's affair. They're the reason the truth ever came to light in the first place. And now, months later, they were being publicly humiliated by strangers for not immediately embracing the very children born out of the betrayal that tore their family apart. I don't fully remember moving. One second I was behind Emma, the next I was standing directly between my daughter and that circle of women. I told Emma to grab their shopping bags, pay for whatever Lily had already picked out, and get straight to the car. Then I turned around, and I did not hold back. I recognized some of those women. I used to sit in the same pews as them. I told them exactly what I thought about 6 grown adults ambushing a grieving teenage girl in public over chocolate at a farmer's market. They told me right back that I was the real problem here, that I had failed to obey my husband like a good Christian wife, and that this whole situation was a direct consequence of that failure. I'll spare you the exact words I used in response. It got loud enough, fast enough, that market security asked all of us to leave the premises. They followed me to my car like a slow-moving flock of vultures, still talking, still judging, right up until I got both my girls inside and pulled out of that parking lot. I don't think I breathed properly again until we were home with the doors locked. That night, once the girls were finally asleep, I reached out online to someone I still trusted from that congregation. I'll call him James. He'd always treated me with basic human decency, even back when others hadn't. I told him exactly what had happened at the market. He apologized immediately, clearly rattled. And then he told me why any of it had happened at all. Diane had posted a long, emotional story in the church's private Facebook group days earlier. In it, she painted Emma, Lily, and me as monsters. She claimed we were leaving her and Robert homeless and penniless, conveniently never mentioning that Mark's life insurance and personal accounts had gone directly to them, not to us. She said my daughters flatly refused to speak to their own grandparents. She said we were the entire reason she'd lost access to her grandsons, who were now living with distant relatives on Mark's side of the family. It read like a script for a Hallmark movie. The grieving, wronged grandmother, the cold, cruel daughter-in-law, the ungrateful granddaughters, and the more extreme members of that congregation ate every word of it up. Prayers poured in, outrage poured in, all on her behalf. Here's the detail that made my stomach turn hardest. That church, whatever else you want to say about it, draws one very hard line. Infidelity, whether from a husband or a wife, is treated as close to unforgivable there. So how exactly did Diane explain 2 little boys who were unmistakably Mark's, born to a woman who very clearly was not me, without ever admitting that her precious son had cheated? She told the entire congregation that Vanessa had been our surrogate, that I was infertile, unable to carry any more children, and that I had rejected the boys outright because they weren't girls. Sit with that for a second. She didn't just protect her son's memory after his death. She rewrote the entire story so that I became the villain who abandoned 2 innocent baby boys because of their gender. I sat there staring at my phone in the dark, and something inside me went very, very quiet. Not calm, the kind of quiet that arrives right before you finally decide something. Here's the thing about being mid-divorce when your spouse suddenly dies. I still had every single piece of documentation. Years of it. Screenshots, texts, photographs, emails, all of it gathered originally for the divorce filing because Mark had contested nearly everything and I needed hard proof. And because that divorce was never legally finalized, exposing any of it now carried 0 legal risk for me. There was no longer a marriage left to protect, and no husband left alive to come after me for it. The next day happened to be my day off. I drove straight to a print shop. I printed everything. The photographs of Mark and Vanessa together, taken inside our own living room, their faces completely unmistakable, her skin tone and hair color nothing at all like mine, so no one could later pretend there was any confusion about who was in those pictures. The text conversations between the 2 of them, the messages proving Diane and Robert had known about the affair for years and had comforted their son through it the entire time, saying absolutely nothing to me. The messages where they harassed me relentlessly during the divorce proceedings. And then, the final piece, the one that still makes my hands shake a little when I think about it, messages where Diane and Robert called my own daughters bastards and told them, in writing, that the affair and their father's death were their fault because they were the ones who told me the truth and started the divorce. That message was sent 2 days after Mark's funeral. 2 days. I paid extra to have every single page printed on heavy, high-quality paper. Then I sat at my kitchen table for hours, carefully assembling small personalized booklets the exact same size, same fold, same simple look as the little hymn packets that church hands out before every Sunday service. The very first page inside every booklet, right when you open the cover, was that photo of Mark and Vanessa mid-kiss in our own living room. Underneath it, in clean, careful lettering, I'd written, Mark and Vanessa's love story. Every page after that told the rest of the story, entirely in their own words. Sunday morning, before service began, I drove to that church. There's a small table near the back where extra hymn booklets sit, ready for anyone who forgot theirs or simply needs an extra one. Nobody ever checks those booklets. Nobody counts them. I know that for a fact because I used to attend that church myself. I slid my booklets in among the real ones, and I left before a single person noticed me. I didn't have to wait long for what came next to be why that same afternoon the church's private Facebook group had turned into an absolute wildfire. The names people were calling Mark and Vanessa got so ugly that the pastor himself had to step in personally just to keep the entire thread from collapsing into chaos. The same people who had been cheering Diane on as a martyr just a week earlier were now furious with her, not only about the affair itself, but about what she and Robert had done to my daughters. That one message, the one calling two grieving teenagers bastards and blaming them for their own father's death, 2 days after his funeral, turned the entire congregation against them almost overnight. Was I still considered wrong for the divorce in their eyes? Apparently, yes. I had failed in my duties, and I might one day return to the light, unlike my cheating husband and his Jezebel. They used another word for Vanessa that I genuinely won't repeat here. But I received 2 handwritten apology letters in the mail that same week, addressed to my girls, and an invitation to return to the church for support, which, respectfully, no thank you.
Diane and Robert never received any such invitation. Instead, they were quietly, thoroughly shunned right out the door. Diane posted one final message on her personal page about how alienated she felt, how nobody cares about the elderly anymore, how her great son would have taken care of both of them if only he were still alive. With what money, exactly, I have absolutely no idea. I was the one who paid every single bill in that house for 18 years. I want to be completely honest with you about how I feel now, looking back. I don't feel a shred of guilt over any of this. Diane and Robert had a choice. They could have grieved their son quietly, privately, and simply let 2 already traumatized teenagers heal at their own pace, in their own time. Instead, they chose to publicly humiliate a 15-year-old girl at a farmer's market and then rewrite an entire family tragedy to cast themselves as the innocent victims. I never lied to that congregation. I never invented a single word. I simply made sure that the people who were ready to crown Diane a martyr got to see, in her own family's handwriting, exactly who they were really dealing with all along. Sometimes the most satisfying justice isn't loud at all. Sometimes it's just the truth, printed neatly on nice paper and left exactly where it needed to be found. If this story gave you chills, go ahead and hit that like button right now and tell me in the comments, what's the boldest, most satisfying revenge you've ever personally witnessed? I read every single one of them. And if you want more stories like this, real people, real justice, real satisfying endings, subscribe because I have a lot more where this came from.